Hello, hello. This is Nicole, John's wife, with a quick announcement. First couple episodes might have a little bit of echoing because we are still unfinished with the podcast studio. We are waiting on some materials and equipment, so until then, bear with us. And that's it. Here's John.
What's up, y'all? My name is John Munson, and this is my podcast called Combat Reload, the Smoke Shack podcast. You gotta forgive me, I really don't know what the fuck I'm doing, so I'm just kind of really just rolling with the punches. Really, what happened I joined the military. I joined the Army National Guard as a 11 Bravo infantryman in 2008. Graduated infantry school October 10, 2008. Then went to my unit. Found out that we were going to deploy for the pullout of Iraq in 2010. So we did a big train up from end of '08 to middle of 2009 in the state or in Florida, and then we flew out to Fort Hood, Texas, and conducted another 3 months of intense training to go ahead and get ready for our advancement downrange. We get downrange March 3rd, 2010, boots on ground. It's nothing really exciting. We just did convoy escort teams fucking inside of Al Jahara City, and it's about 45 minutes away from Kuwait City, I think, some shit like that. It's on the outskirts. There's another Air Force installation there, Ali Aslam Air Base. My base was Camp Virginia. It's no longer there. They took it down. I guess it wasn't needed anymore with the drawdown and everything happening. So do 10, maybe 11 months there. We come home. I did hurt my shoulder there probably 3-4 months in, just weightlifting, just something stupid. I just heard a rip and a pop and ignored the pain, kind of just toughed through it. Got home, was just really depressed about how, I didn't get an infantry combat mission and we were doing more of an MP style, convoy mission. Ate me up a lot as a grunt, as grunts we want to deploy, kill, maim, destroy the enemy, do all that cool stuff. So I took up drinking heavily, heavily drinking, probably doing a liter 1.75 liter of Captain Morgan's every day and a half. Fucking mask the depression, to mask I have nothing wrong with me back then, and just help with the pain and help with anxiety, which it doesn't really help. It kind of just puts this, especially when you're young and you get injured, your body is more able to recover from those injuries faster, depending on what they are. I had a decent injury, but I didn't really realize it at the time. But it wasn't. I was still able to run, lift, carry, do all this stuff. So I kind of went down this really bad binge drinking hole and got fat. Some fat ass, whatever. It's 2011, and I remember showing back up to drill, and everyone noticed I was heavier, and people were starting to notice there were some things wrong with me. I wasn't as motivated as before, everything else. And it took one of my great people I'm going to have on the podcast, John Derek Hunt. He's also known as Staff Sergeant Hunt. Man, he's an awesome guy. He was one of my best mentors I ever had. And if he saw me fucking up and he saw me giving up, he would let me have it as my team leader and squad leader, and it was for good measures, because I always felt that, he was hard on me, and he might have been harder on me than others, but at the same time, I think that if people care for you, they're willing to go out of their way when they don't have to try to get you up and out, and try to move you on, carry on with the mission. So I get home, I'm like, he's right. Let me try. I'm gonna start getting in shape. So I start doing I start exercising, I start running, I start losing the weight, start eating better, not drinking as much. But then the more I was running, the more I was working out, the more I was wearing and tearing that injury that I had, and not knowing it. And then, especially doing my infantry job on top of that, when I would get called up for, for a weekend or for a week or for 2 weeks in the summer or getting state activated, whatever it was. And I just had this thing in my head, like from there, that was kind of like my moving up into the military realm where you got to get over your fucking shit and move up. And so around like 2012, I came back, I was strong, fit, good again, and mentally sort of right. But went to Germany, did a training mission there for about like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. In Hollinsfeld, helped train up a couple local national, not local national, but European forces. Came back from that. Also went right into getting state activated and then having to go to Tampa during the Republican National Convention, and that was a whole nother experience. Did like maybe a week and a half there, came home, ended up getting fired from my civilian job because of all the National Guard stuff I had going on, which is highly illegal, but you got to have people on your side that will, fend for you. But I don't blame people, because if my job was on the line and I didn't have anything else to rely on, I wouldn't be voicing my opinion either. So 2013 hits, we got a big exercise storming up, and usually for that amount of time I've been in, for the 8 years I had been in, usually when you start doing a lot of train ups and you start going, guys start going to all these different schools, javelin school, air assault school, all these specialty schools, usually that means that there's an influx of, funding, and usually influx of funding means that there's a deployment maybe around the corner, either if that's a combat deployment, or a combat zone, like going to a combat zone deployment, or just going to Germany or something. Yeah, so 2013 we're doing the big train up. This is I got transferred into weapons platoon, weapons squad. So I was in weapons squad, and so my team leader was one of my best guys. I named my kid after him. My kid's middle name is Trevor, so it's Trevor Thomas, good buddy of mine. He's another guy I'm going to have on the show eventually. Was my team leader. We just did a lot of gun placement things, your regular AT, shenanigans, or like, for active duty when you guys go to NTC and shit, you're going through all that bullshit. You're doing battle drill 1 alpha. You're doing all these stupid things. You're conducting ambushes, near side, far side. You name it, we're doing it. We're clearing buildings, everything. So I come home from that. So not only we did that, I also had to go to air assault school. I had orders to go to air assault school right after that, maybe like a few days after that. So then I go to air assault school, graduate, come back home, report to my unit. Then I go to javelin missile school. And then so I'm seeing this again, and I'm like, well, okay, yeah, so I think we're going to spin up, right? So then we find out that we're going to go to the Horn of Africa. By then I know that there was something wrong with my back, but I was like, I got this, but I'm going to tough it out. And so 2014, we're training up. The train up wasn't as intense as 2010 was, so I was thinking to myself, this might not be as bad, but it was just because our mission was an ECP, security, which is entry control point. So it was a lot different from the first deployment. First deployment, we were doing convoy escort, so we were always in and out, driving our roads, always out and away from the base camp. So, and then the 2015 deployment, when we get there and we figure out what our mission is, it was like, just sit in guard duty, and for people that are watching, other veterans that know what guard duty is, man, that shit sucks. You just sit around and bake in the heat and wait for your SOG to come around and tell you something. I did like a month and a half, 2 months there, and then I just started realizing my back was just going out, like wasn't having it, all the body armor on all the time, all the mags I had on me, everything was just weighing down, backpack, and it was just standing there with that shit on and putting it off, putting it on, put it off. And I just started noticing that both of my hands were started numbing, like going tingling and numbing in my fingers. I was dropping stuff. I couldn't do things like I was. And then when I was running, it was hurting worse. I go and I see a major at first, and he's kind of like, oh, just take some fucking Tylenol, drink some water, and, whatever, carry on. So he says, hey, I'm going to, do 3 weeks. I'm going to write you like a semi-profile for 3 weeks. If it's still worse and you come back, they might have to send you home. And I'm like, okay, they're not going to send me home. We're in a no-leave policy area, so whatever. So 3 weeks go by, but it's getting worse. So, like, the shooting pains in my arms are getting worse. It's feeling like someone's taking my bicep and cutting it off into pieces, which is kind of a horrific way to think about it, but that's really how it felt. So I go back, and I'm complaining about the same fucking pain again, and this time they said, oh, there's a note in there that if he comes back, we need to get the battalion colonel in here, or the battalion aid station, which was a full-bird colonel, or however the fuck it is in the medical, whatever, battalion aid commander probably is what it is. Anyways, so go there, and he's conducting his own test because he's like a therapeutic surgeon in his civilian job, right? Because we're National Guard, we're not fucking active duty 24/7, So he's looking me over, and he's finding out all these different tests are coming back positive, and they do this test for Hoffman's disease, and it's like really rare in adults, and it usually happens in children, and they die, usually infants. And it's coming back positive, and that's not just the first time it comes back positive. He does x-rays, he looks at the x-rays. It takes about a week for them to form out like that they're going to send me home, but he ends up making the decision that my injury is serious enough that it needs MRIs and it needs to be stateside until they can figure out if I'm going to go back or not. So they send me back. I catch a rotator flight with a bunch of Air Force people leaving, and get back to Fort Bliss. It was on the weekend. It was like a Saturday or something I got back, and the master sergeant picked us up, and he was like, do you want to go to the hospital now or do you want to wait? And I was like, I don't know, man. And he's like, we'll get you to the hospital on Monday, get you MRIs, all that stuff. And and I'm already tired as hell. I just want to get back and rack out. So the Monday comes, he takes me, gets me MRIs done. The MRIs get uploaded to whatever battalion surgeon that's at that hospital. They have me come in with the master sergeant like the next couple days from my best memory, and with my caretaker, I think it was, or my PCM or whoever it was. And because my unit wanted to know, am I coming back? Am I coming back? Am I good? Am I coming back? And the surgeon, so my caretaker asked on my behalf, and the surgeon literally laughed in his face and was like, no, his career's over, and then showed him the herniation. So I had a herniated disc in the C5 through 7, and it was protruding into my spinal canal to where my spinal canal was now coming off balance like an MRIs. It was pushing into it. And that was creating a lot of tension on the spinal cord, which was creating the pain and reception in my arms, my legs, everything. So my unit gets the word I'm not coming back, like I'm done, career's over. From there, I spent a month in med holdover until they got me permanent orders to Fort Stewart for getting med boarded out of the military. So I get there, and people have told me that I was, when I was flying over, I was talking to like some lieutenant commander flying in civilians, and he was saying that, it's a long road, but it's worth it. And I just kept remembering that in my head. But eventually, the time goes by. Like when I got there, I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. And basically all it is you're going to like a place for wounded warriors. You're going there. The people's mission and their job there is to get you in processed, get you to barracks, get you medical attention the next day or whenever, everything opens back up again, getting everything uploaded, files, everything. So that way, after all your medical things are over with and then you do your CMP exams, and then all that gets sent up to the big dogs that make the decision. So I spent almost a year there, get to the part where I get med boarded. I got released August 27th, 2016 was my final day in the military. My wife picked me up, get home. She had set up a nice little retirement thing for me, all that stuff. But then I started drinking again. I started drinking heavily again. I started getting really bad into it because I was depressed. I didn't have that camaraderie anymore. I didn't have those fellow guys that I served with for years on end. The guys that I show up on a weekend drill and I'm like, damn, this is why I stay in, because my guys. I love these guys. We've been teammates for fucking ever. We've been on fucking a whole deployment together, and a second partial deployment. And then you start to realize, you might be important to those people, but you start to realize that life moves on and people forget, right? But until you can have that mentality, you're always going to suffer from that certain depression or that guilt that you feel like you left everyone down. And I still suffer from that, but I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that life moves on, people forget about things, and I should too, and just continue reaching out to the future and striving your best. So get home, drinking heavily, end up getting a fucking cervical surgery because nothing was working. Trying injections, trying all this stuff, nothing worked. So my first surgery was at Laser Spine Institute. They did like something where they take like a laser and they open you up and then they like burn nerve endings, or they like burn it down to a certain point and then it regrows back later on or something. It's supposed to help, but it didn't help. So then I ended up getting my C5 and my C6, my 2 disc levels pull out and then replaced with artificial discs. And then from drinking and then going into that, then the narcotics came, right? They came before, like when I was in Fort Stewart, but not like this. So these, automatically, they see my insurance, that's good, all that stuff. So they're giving me hard shit, right? They're like, oh, we took 2 levels, so you're gonna be in a lot of pain. So here's oxycodone 10s. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm popping these 10s, right? And at first I'm like, holy shit, whoa, where the fuck am I? But then my tolerance starts to get higher and higher, right? Addiction starts to kick in. So now I'm addicted to pills, right? So now they give me like a 30-day supply and then I ran out and then they're like, oh yeah, we'll refill it. We'll actually give you a 90-day supply because you had 2 levels taken. I get down to where I'm almost out of those and then I start freaking the fuck out, right? Because I wasn't taking 2 every 4 hours or doing it how I was supposed to do it. I was taking 2 and then once my body started getting used to it, I take another one, take 3. Then to the point where I'm taking 4 pills a day. Which is fucking insane. It's not doing anything for me. I'm treating my wife like shit. I'm treating my kid like shit. I'm treating myself like shit. Others, I'm miserable. I don't want to do anything. I couldn't even walk around the mall for like 5 minutes without being super pissed off and wanting to take more pills. So I finally made a decision to kick the pills and just beat it cold turkey. And that was a hard decision, but it's worth it. But it is a tough road to just beat it. I felt like I had the flu every day. When I drank room temperature water, I felt like it was ice cubes going down my system. Like, it was weird. Throwing up, sweating, normal addict stuff, when you're detoxing. So I finally kicked it. Came to a point where I get back into drinking again. The drinking becomes such a bad problem that where I start treating my wife really bad and my son, and that's something that I'll never forget. Like, I can't take those memories back. I can't take that stuff back, and that's something that still eats me up till this day. But like I always say, we gotta push forward. You gotta forget. You'll never forget, but you gotta leave that somewhere else, just, it's there, but you got to carry on. You got to move on. You got to jump that mountain and get to the next one. So, get back into drinking again. And it gets to the point where my wife's going to divorce me, and I don't fucking blame her. She got to a point where she was afraid to come inside of the house, or because I was going to yell at her, or I was going to nitpick at the house, when she would come back from school. And I'm doing this to her like when she's going through school. And I was surprised sometimes why, she's still with me, and I love her to death. That's why I wanted to change everything for her. And my son, those memories when I was drunk and yelling at him and he doesn't even know what's going on, I can't take that back, and that'll still haunt me forever. But we got to move on, right? So notice the problem, notice the issue, and then also go and get help from the VA for my depression, anxiety, my PTSD. Then from there, talking to my social worker, great social worker for VA if you live in Melbourne. His name is Justin Woods. Shout out, my bro, fellow 11 Bravo. Great guy at the Viera VA clinic in Melbourne, Florida. He was like, your back is getting worse. You've been through surgery. It's not getting better. He's like, you should put in, let's move the pieces. He's like, you're not going to, because my biggest fear was I put in for a re-up and they deny me, or they take money away from me. And that's every veteran's thing, right? But if you got real problems and real issues and you got real evidence, they're not going to deny you. I put in for a re-up for 100 P&T, do my CMP exams, I get the change, I click on it on eBenefits, and it show I'm looking through it, and it says my percent went from 90 to 100, right? So I'm like, oh shit, what happened? So then I go and I look, and I told Justin Woods, and I was on the phone with him as he guided me through to look and see my benefit verification letters. And so I look at those, and then sure enough, it says 100% permanent total, disabled. I was ecstatic, kind of like, okay, that's kind of like a big burden off your back, because, my wife is going to school at the time, and she doesn't have a job. She all her time's focused in school and graduating, getting this stuff done, So I'm supporting this family on me working, and when that working was hurting me even worse, just my VA pension at 90%, which isn't much, and that jump from 90 to 100 is huge, especially with dependents. So get that done, end up going through a phase of where my wife and me got into an argument again. I'm drunk, and we're arguing over the same shit again. But I say something to her so degrading and defensive that she slaps me across the face. That was June 13, 2019. And because it all makes sense, because she did that. I posted it on Facebook or something. My buddies came back, picked me up, go to a bar, keep drinking, right? You're drunk, some stupid shit happens with you and your wife, and you leave and you go to a bar and you keep drinking, right? That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to stop, collect your thoughts, walk if you gotta walk, stay in the vicinity, so that way you're not leaving them behind, and calmly try to come up with something. Maybe take the night off and go to sleep and sleep off the alcohol and talk in the morning. But absolutely do not keep going out and drinking. You're just adding fuel to the fire, so. And fucking, I get really shit-faced. I come back. I go to sleep. I think I had school the next day, and go to school, and I had a fucking seizure, and find out, like, it's not because of the alcohol. It's because I have idiopathic epilepsy, and they believe it's related to the military and military injuries. I had the seizure. Then after I had the seizure, school was never the same. Nothing was ever the same. It really took a toll on me. I can't even study the same anymore. I can't. I know, and I hate to say can't, right? We got to carry on. We got to push forward. But I just feel that way. It just, the medication I'm on for the seizures, it's just, fuck, man, that shit just fucks you up. So then my wife, we go to marriage counseling. Then I end up finding, marijuana, trying it, and realizing, holy shit, this is a whole new world. I'm not drinking alcohol anymore. I'm not doing pills anymore. I'm just smoking this stuff that's from the fucking earth. And it makes me feel like I can have another purpose in life again, right? That's what we talk about when we're trying to overcome our disabilities. I kind of get into like a depressive state again, and my wife comes at me again. She says, hey, why don't you start working on the podcasting that we were talking about? And so me and my wife, we start looking into it, we start talking about it, we start doing it, and it's been slowly but surely coming along. Met up with this great company. I love them. They're amazing. Their products are awesome. I gotta give them a shout out. Jet Dispensary, right? In Everett, Washington. Awesome products, awesome staff, awesome owners, amazing people. Highly recommend them. So this point, and coming to the end of this podcast, that's kind of pretty much in a nutshell how I came to this whole thing, this whole podcast, this whole idea. I kind of want to show people that weed or marijuana, whatever you want to call it, dude, it helps. And there's always a path to recovery. I'm just your average soldier, your average guy that just wants to try to show the world, this guy can overcome all this stuff and actually have another opportunity to life. It helps with depression, anxiety, chronic pain, you name it, it helps. They got special strains that help you eat or not eat, or that help you sleep, not sleep. The list goes on and on. For me, it's worked wonders. I'm here. I'm still here. I'm trying my hardest to keep going. I appreciate y'all listening. It really does. It means a lot, Like I said, I'm new at this. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm kind of just rolling with the punches. So I'm what I hope is to reach certain individuals that are looking for someone who has gone through some serious shit and still come out to where you're a decent individual person and you're still striving to meet other goals. And I hope that, it reaches those people and they get motivated and they get going. Well, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you very much. Like I said, it's just an introduction podcast. We got plenty more coming. So I'm going to be working my ass off, trying to get you guys as much as I can. Love you guys. See you.
So this is Nicole, John's wife again. I just wanted to clarify some things that John had mentioned in his introductory podcast. So there were a couple events that he got mixed around, understandably, because the seizures do interfere with his memory recollection. There was a seizure that he talked about having after a big fight we had the next day. He said he was at school, but that was actually a separate event about a month prior to the big fight we had. And then the seizure he had the next day was actually the morning of the next day, and he was in our home. We were at home together, and I was in the bedroom with Marshall, and John was on the couch watching YouTube on his phone or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I heard weird sounds in the living room, and that's when I ran out into the living room and grabbed your wallet and shoved it in your mouth and turned you over on your side. And then you said the scariest thing about that seizure was that you were completely conscious for it but couldn't do anything.
Right, yeah. So I was like I could see everything happening, but I couldn't do anything. So it was kind of like sleep paralysis almost, but you're awake. So it's a pretty wild experience.
And then after we went to the emergency room, the doctor had said that, yes, in fact, most likely mixing alcohol with your meds and then being severely dehydrated is what triggered that seizure. And then that's when you finally, I mean, I was pretty frustrated and fed up and done at that point, and that's when you made the decision to become sober from alcohol.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify those couple
Yep.
memories that got mixed up a little bit. Right now we're actually in Corvallis, Oregon, visiting family for the holiday. It's one of my favorite places in the continental United States. This is the second time you've been here, right?
Yeah, it's the second time. It's nice up here. We got good weed.
And Oregon State University. It's really pretty. Old brick buildings.
There's no state tax here.
So that's why we're keeping the first episode kind of short. We were gonna jump into some other topics like, being with a 4-year-old during the COVID crisis. It's kind of stressful, and a couple other topics, but because of the holiday, we're gonna keep it a little bit short, and then we're gonna dive into some deeper topics with episode 2, where you get to hear John have a conversation with our marriage counselor. So with that, we wish you all a happy and safe holiday, and that's it. Thanks for joining us.
Yep, have a good one, y'all. Love ya.